Good morning. How the devil are you doing this fine day? Hope you're all fit and well. It is Peter McKenna's birthday today. Haven't seen him in the chat yet, so I'll save the confetti until he arrives. Just to let you know, there is a new column dropped this morning. It is behind a paid firewall, I'm afraid, but we do that once a week or thereabouts. The article itself is called "Putting Lipstick on a Pig." Because why wouldn't you call it that? Basically, cut a long story short, it's about the attempts to launch Skills England to make other training organisations like the CITB look better when in actual fact they need root and branch reconfiguration. I would say Jim Turner's just joined us. Good morning, Jim. And Gary Muirhead was actually first off the mark this morning. Good morning to Gary as well. And Gary has got in early as well with a happy birthday, Peter McKenna. Not seen him yet. Hopefully he's going to join us so we can all wish him a happy birthday. I don't have a cake on standby, but we may do something. Let's see how we go. So yes, that new column is called Putting Lipstick on a Pig. You can go and find it whenever you see fit. Steve Williamson just joined this morning. Steve, hope you're well, my friend. Almost time for the Black Isle show and what is it? It's a getting back to a rediscovering of the bromance between yourself and Ed Butler. I was looking forward to hearing the news from that. Well, we're looking forward to hearing some of the news. Mark Whiting's just joined us as well. Morning, Mark. Got a couple of things that I need to tell you about. Well, one big thing I need to tell you about. We're going to do things slightly differently today. I wouldn't say yesterday's show went wrong because it didn't, but because we had so much to speak about up front, we ended up running late with certain bits of the show, like the Mystery Machine. And I know that it's caught the attention of quite a few people now, and I know people have to get back to work. So we're going to, rather than front-loading the show like we did yesterday, we're going to get into the show as soon as we can, as soon as we possibly can, and then at that point we will close the show, do the crack, do all the bits that we normally do, and then I'm going to start another bit, which is industry news. I'll tell you about it in just a moment. Steve Williamson says, got asked from today from a supervisor, thinking of going to Balmer. What is it like? I couldn't find a word to describe it. Yeah. Massive, impressive. Doesn't really cut it, does it? Chris Ford says, morning trips, good morning as well. Steve Williamson says, do you own the Bobcat merchandise shop? I don't, but I'd like to. In actual fact, there is a couple of new hats in there that I quite like the look of. I may well wait until they come up with a discount before I step in for that. Did we not say that before? I think you probably did. It's an organic show, so we are learning as we go along. And one of the things that I'm very conscious of, particularly now we're broadcasting on Twitch tends to prefer you to broadcast for longer. Obviously most of our shows are an hour and a bit thereabouts. I think we need to go longer, certainly on Twitch. So what I'm planning to do, and you'll see it today if you decide to stick around, the start of the show will be in the next 2 minutes or so. So we'll do that bit like we normally do. We'll do the crack like we normally do, and then we'll go over into the news. The news bit won't have any video. It will just be talking head. So if you have to get back to work, but you'd like something playing in the background, and if you can tolerate my voice, that would be a good way to do it. As I say, it won't be overly visual. I'll be on the screen, but it will be predominantly audio, and you can join in as you see fit. So we've already had our first guest of our Mystery Machine, which reminds me, the Mystery Machine is tucked away at the moment. Bear with me just 1 second while I put it up. I'm getting ahead of myself, but we're there anyway. Jim Turner has said a 3311 dump truck. It's not one of those. But keep the guesses coming. Well, wait until I've actually shown it to you and then keep the guesses coming. How about that? So, as I've said, we're going to get on almost immediately. So, without further ado, let me roll the intro, post the question of the day, and get this show on. Hang on a minute. What the hell? What the hell is Twitch? Steve, as the youngest or the younger member of the audience, I'd have thought you'd have known this. It is Earth Moving Equipment Australia has just joined us over on Instagram, by the way. Basically, it is the world's biggest live streaming platform. It's owned by Amazon. I'm sure I said this yesterday. Owned by Amazon, but it is a standalone. Lots and lots of gaming goes on over there, but there's also a lot of news and chat and that kind of thing. We signed up to it a couple of days ago. I think we've been broadcasting live to Twitch for about a week now. Slow build up. I'm not expecting to conquer the world with it, but if you are into that kind of thing, Twitch, twitch.tv/demolition news. You can watch us over there. So now we've clarified that, let me do the thing that I said I was going to do. Let's roll the intro. And you see, this is the kind of comment I was hoping to get. Jim Turner says, sounds perfect. I'm normally back digging by 10:30, so I'm mostly on audio after that. That's what we're after. That is the bit we're trying to do. And Balmer is like a big kid sandbox. And some. I mean, if you think, I can't even put a scale. I mean, one of the things that I think gets lost in translation is whenever we talk about it within this industry, we refer to it as the biggest exhibition in the world. But it's not just the biggest construction exhibition in the world. It is the biggest exhibition in the world. There's no fashion shows, car shows, air shows. There is nothing on this planet bigger than Balmer. It is absolutely extraordinary. So if your friend or colleague is planning to go, advise them to do so, would you? And there's Jim, Dan Carter saying, I'm the same as Jim. So yes, we'll do the crack as we normally do. I'm going to try and keep up with things like the question of the day during the show to keep that all nicely rounded out. And then once the crack is over and done with, I've got a new jingle to play. We'll go straight into the news, and I've got 2 or 3 news items that caught my eye, and I thought we'd be doing all of that. The Black Isle show. Says Steve, the whole show is smaller than the Leap Air stand. And yet that would still be quite big. Yeah, indeed. Right, okay, it is Wednesday. The 24th of July. Welcome to the Breakfast Show. I am your host, Mark Anthony, the Walrus of Demolition, apparently. In today's show, is this new XCMG Telehandler hot or not? We're going to be checking out a giant Komatsu wheel loader, though not the one that I was hoping to bring you, and Demolition Italian style. Plus, Case delivers its first electric mini excavator into the North American market. Manasankar just said hi. Good morning over on Instagram. And as I've already mentioned, we are going to have a new news segment after the show. The normal show is over and done with. So, yeah, keep an eye out for that. But before we get to all that, we do have the small matter of today's mystery machine, which looks like, well, I'll show you after this. Okay, things are hotting up on the mystery machine front. Steve Williamson is still 3 victories in front of everybody else. We had a new winner yesterday in Jonathan Duras, but this is what we've got to contend with today. So, Steve, Dan, Gary, Jim, everybody else that's watching, this is what you have to work with. There you are. It's a wheel. That's all you've got so far. If you've got any suggestions on what that might be, I'm looking for make and model if you would be so kind. Leave that up for a second just while you're figuring that out, and then I will just add a comment. What is the comment there? Steve Williamson just says, I've come up with the idea of the Knox selfie, letting kids or whoever come and get a selfie with a tilt rotator in the background. Fantastic idea. I tell you what, and I don't know whether you want to go to this kind of level. Have you seen, you go to a lot of exhibitions now, and we'll take that away for just a moment. You go to exhibitions now, and there's people with frames, so you can be you actually hold the frame, and you're within the frame, and you can brand the frame, for example, so you could actually have Kinsoffer or Knox or something like that on it. But you hold it up, and you're in it, and the Knox is. Go have a look. I'm sure you know exactly what I'm talking about. While you're trying to figure out our mystery machine, let me very quickly remind you of our question of the day. Yep, it's a nice, simple one for you today. Our question of today is quite simply this. Is there a moment that you experienced that you wish you'd captured on film? To set the tone, I've got a couple. First one is as straightforward as they come. I was fishing with my dad when I was a kid. I was probably 10, 11 years old, I guess. And a deer walked over. I was sat on my own, fishing away. Deer walked over. It was maybe 30 feet away, then 20, then 10. In the end, it actually took a piece of sandwich from my hand before strolling off. Completely unfazed by my presence. Wish I'd caught that on camera. My other one was way more spectacular, and honestly, I wish this had happened in the age of CCTV. I pulled into a petrol station once, and I was chewing gum while I filled my car with diesel. As I walked towards the shop to pay for my fuel, I spat out my chewing gum and caught it on the volley with my right foot. The gum went precisely, and I do mean precisely, where I wanted to. There was a bin. I guess the bin would have been about 4 foot tall, and there was a slot in it about that big. And the gum went straight in. Didn't touch the side, straight in. It was that good a shot. I mean, obviously, it was the greatest shot of all time. It was that good. I actually did a little one of those. And nobody saw it. The greatest shot of all time, and it was just me that saw it. If that happened today, in the days of forecourt CCTV, I'd probably be getting phone calls from West Ham by now. Bring your boots out of retirement. You've got yourself a game in a couple of weeks' time. But what about you? Do you have any such moments that you wish you'd captured on film? Let's have a look over on the chat. 222. So all guesses on our mystery machine. We have got Dan Cullen. Dan Cullen go for a Merlop. It's a obviously he means Merlot 3511. It's not. Merlot Roto 7028. It's not one of those. Merlot P3511. Nope. Merlot TF 30.9. No. Merlot P38-12. No. A Manitou MT420H. It's not one of those. A Merlot TF 35.7-115 turbo. It's not one of those. And a Merlot 33.9. It's none of those things, but well spotted on the color scheme. Let me give you a bit more. Oh, look, it's another wheel. Yeah, a couple of you are on the right path. You've not got there yet, but you're on the right path. I'm going to take that away because we do have a show to begin. So let's play a bit of this. Yeah, time for a bit of hot or not. I'm going to play you a video of a new XCMG Telehandler in just a few moments, and I'd like you to decide whether you believe it to be hot or not. Over to you. I can tell you. Let me just do this one first. Dan Cullen reckons the XCMG is awesomely hot. So I'm inclined to agree. I can tell you, we do have a winner already. I think we're 2 frames in. Yeah, we've got 2 wheels. That's all I've shown you. But we do have a winner. Which way has it gone? I think we left it. Where did we leave it? I think we left it round about there with Gary Muirhead saying the Manitou MT420H. It's not one of those. There's a Merlot from Dan. There's another Merlot from Dan. The Merlot Roto from Steve Williamson. The Merlot P32-6 or 0.6 from Gary Muirhead. Not one of those. Roto 5030 Merlot. It's not one of those. Bear with me. Now, we're still getting guesses coming through now. I can tell you that at 10:17, Gary Muirhead went for one of those. At the same time, Steve Williamson went for one of those. Steve also went for one of those. But I can tell you we have a winner, and it is a previous winner. Do we have, has Steve Williamson extended his lead? Or has somebody caught him up slightly? I can tell you somebody's caught him up slightly, because the correct answer was that from Dan Cullen. It is indeed the Merlot DM9 cab dumper, and it was at Plantworks. You're absolutely right. And there is what it looks like, the DM9. Dan Cullen just stepped a little bit closer. And funnily enough, there's Steve Williamson getting the answer at 10:18. What is the time now? So yes, he got it, but he didn't get it soon enough. So Dan, you're just 2 victories behind now. Steve Williamson, he's coming for you, my friend. He is snapping at your ankles. Well done, Dan, says Gary Muirhead. Well done, Dan, indeed. I did think about putting that one in black and white, if I'm being completely honest, because the colour scheme is a bit of a giveaway, but well done, Dan, regardless of all of that. Yes, let's crack on, shall we? We've decided the Mystery Machine. We also know that the XCMG Telehandler is hot, so we'll do a bit of this.
If you are enjoying this episode, please consider supporting the show. You can leave us a tip at buymeacoffee.com/demolition news.
Magnanimous in defeat. Steve Williamson says, well done, Dan boy. I think he's covering up the fact that he's a little bit worried. No one thought of the Merlot dumpers. Well, apparently somebody did. Right, so you may recall yesterday we were talking about the Komatsu WE2350, the biggest wheel loader in the world. I played a clip of one in action, but I promised that I would go away and see if I could find something better. And I couldn't. Found plenty of clips of the 2350 back when it was badged as a Latorno, from 12 years ago, but all of the films looked like they were shot on a potato. There's nothing that I could find of any real note from Komatsu, although I'm speaking to them tomorrow. I will ask the question again. But while I was searching, I came across the WE2350's slightly smaller brother, and it really is quite impressive. So take a look at this. Yes, that is the WE. What did I say it was? The WE 1850, was it? The 1850-3. It is slightly smaller. These things are relative. It's still a bloody monster of a machine, but it is slightly smaller than 2350. I'm not entirely sure what the tonnage of either of those is. I will check and I will come back to you and tell you. Going back to the comments, there's Dan Cullen saying nothing small about that. What is the actual difference of the two? As I say, I'll come back on that. I thought Cat made a big loader. Cat makes some very big loaders, but the 2350 apparently is in the record books as the biggest. And good morning to Ken, by the way. We had a comment here from... Steve says, need a video of the Merlot dumpers. Fun enough, Steve, I've just been over to YouTube to see if I could find something. Can't find a damn thing. Nothing there at all. So whether they are such a new addition to the range, I don't honestly know. But there you are. Can't find anything. As soon as I find something, I will let you know. What I can tell you, though, is as of this morning, our YouTube channel, the Demolition News YouTube channel, 118,000 followers. Yeah. Steve just said the Cat 994K is the 5th biggest one they do. What is the biggest one they do then, I wonder? Kind of out of touch with Caterpillar a little bit, although obviously off to Minexpo in a few weeks. Well, it's 9 weeks time now. So hoping to catch up with the 5 folks at Caterpillar and bring you lots of footage about that as well. Just to reiterate, if you weren't here earlier in the week, one of the things that I'm planning to do, if I can, is to do like a travel vlog of the trip, basically starting in Las Vegas, but I want to take you around the city. I want to take you around the show, take you around the hotels and the sights and the sounds of Vegas, really trying to give you a flavor of exactly what Minexpo was all about from start to finish. And if we can pull that off, and as I say, I'd like it to be a 30-minute film. If I can make it a half hour, a full hour film, I will do that, and we'll do a Wednesday evening premiere of that. So watch this space. I'll be bringing you that very, very soon. So on with the show, because we're off to Italy in just a second. Okay, we've got some clarification. Thanks for this, Steve. That's much appreciated. The Cat 994 is the largest ever wheel loader built by Caterpillar, but it is the 5th biggest on the list of wheel loaders. Dan Cullen says, I don't think those dumpers are a hit as yet. I think, if I remember correctly, the go-up plant was said was more roadworks than site work dumper. Yeah, and there's a configuration that's actually got a cement mixer on it as well. I've seen a video of that. Not really a British thing, to be honest. But as I say, I'll reach out to Merlot and see if they've actually got anything. Obviously, the machines are pretty new, but it staggers me, to be perfectly honest. There's a number of companies that are still launching new machines, and they send you a photograph. You ask them for a video. Oh no, we haven't filmed it yet. You'd have thought in this day and age, the video age, the Instagram age, and the YouTube age, you would have thought that would be part and parcel of launching a new machine. Who the hell knows? Right. As I said, we're off to Italy. We're off to look at some demolition, and we're doing so in the company of the manufacturers of some very, very fine attachments indeed. Mantovani Bene. Okay, so we're going to address a few bits and pieces here. Caterpillar 6090 FS is the biggest excavator in the world. You could well be right. I have to admit, I do. I used to keep a track on these things. I don't anymore. Steve says we tried to use a shear on demo. Cutting steel was too unpredictable if things went flying. They do have a nasty habit of pinging, it has to be said. Dan Cullen says that is a tune. Would love to work to see those ships passing. It wouldn't be a bad place, would it? What kind of excavator is that? Do you know, Steve? I saw that comment come up, and I was looking for some kind of clue. No idea. Literally no idea. I mean, obviously they've done a pretty impressive paint job on that. As Dan Cullen says, love the paintwork on those machines. Amazing. Yeah, but it did cover up exactly what they were. Steve says like a prehistoric animal grazing. I thought he meant me for a second there. And I'm also going to say a very good warm welcome to Mr. Neil Edwards, who's just joined us over on Instagram, fresh back from his holidays. Neil, funnily enough, your ears must have been burning, my friend, because I was talking to a mutual friend about you just yesterday. Let's have a catch up. I'll drop your line after the show, and we'll see if we can catch up in the very near future. So, where are we going next? I know where we're going next. We're off to America with Case. See you in just a jiffy.
Since the finance bill came into effect in April, the construction industry has seen a surge of fuel thefts. The rising cost of living has placed an additional risk of theft by employees and contractors, as well as opportunistic thieves. By using diesel dye and placing warnings of its use, you are sending a clear message that this is your fuel.
Ken Hatcher reckons that could have been a Hitachi counterweight on the machines in Italy. Not entirely sure, but there we are. First thing I'm doing after the show, Bobcat merch shop to see these new caps. Yeah, there's a new one. Looks a bit like that. I mean, obviously that's a whacker hat. Looks a bit like that, but that panel there is that color. It's really, really smart. But I mean, please carry on. Carry on. Use, go and get yourself some Bobcat hats and stuff, but you might want to hold off because we are in negotiation. I mentioned this yesterday. We're in negotiation with the fine folks at Bobcat to try and get you a discount code. So watch this space on that. See Diesel Dye, says Steve Williamson. What if everyone used the same color? I'm pretty sure they've thought of that, but I don't know. It's a good question. It seems like a silly question, but it's a very good question. Well done on that. What's happened there? Mostly diggers. Garvin has just joined us over on Instagram. There's hundreds of people. I just pick out certain names, to be perfectly honest. I can't guarantee it'll be 50% off, but it will be a discount. I'll tell you that much. We talk about electric machines here, and obviously, lots of you have tried electric machines. I think we've all probably seen one in the wild by now. So I was a little bit surprised to find out that Case has literally just delivered its first electric mini excavator into North America.
This morning we're on our way delivering the CX-15 EV, the first electric mini excavator that Case has offered, and we're actually getting to deliver the first one in North America to Brinkman Plumbing. I couldn't think of a better customer to put in the hands of and grow his business with all the interior work that he's going to be able to do with this.
We do a lot of, like you say, plumbing, excavating, but where they shine at is when I'm inside buildings. We got to go through 36-inch doors. So when Rob gave me a holler and he said, hey, we got a new machine out there that's going to meet your needs. We do a lot of factory work. We don't want carbon monoxide anywhere near us. So probably more exciting with this little machine than I have been with any other ones because it's going to just save us a lot of headache and time and backache. So with the quietness is a huge thing. We was just doing a dentist office. Well, we could get started at 6:30 and work right through. I hope that the word gets out that we got the machine. Not only that, I think we can be a lot more competitive. Like we was talking earlier, we're doing probably twice the amount of work with less manpower and more equipment. To be able to say they're the first one in America to have an all battery machine, that's pretty awesome. A little company like ours to have that.
I could talk about that. I'm just going to use Steve's comment. Makes total sense. Yeah. You're working indoors. Why would you not? Why would you not? A bit more. I'm going to say Steve Williamson just said good morning to Garvin. I'll come back to Garvin in just a moment. Dan Cullen, back on diesel dye, says, in all fairness, I've yet to see diesel dye on any site. Jim Turner, in answer to the earlier question, I think you can have your own individual dye color made for your company. That would certainly explain it. And as Garvin has just put on over on Instagram, ironic, I have to go and steal some diesel now to keep me going today. Check what color it is, would you, before you do that? Steve Williamson says, good to see another brand going electric. I like it. I like it too. Dan Cullen says, nice little machine, now a plumbing company owning an excavator. That's a first. It's a very different market in America. And you know, you have to question the sense of it, but there are landscaping companies in America that tackle demolition. And I'm not just talking about taking down a garden shed. I mean fairly significant bits of demolition. Now, as I say, our new section after today's proper show is going to get into the fact that there has finally been a prosecution and the case closed on an accident in which a guy was killed up at Great Yarmouth back in 2019 while demolishing an oil rig. I'm not proposing that landscaping companies are necessarily equipped for demolition, but in America they do things slightly differently. You know, as I say, landscaping going over into demolition, and as you saw there's a plumbing company. We need to lay pipes and stuff like that. Why would you not have an excavator? And if you're going to be working indoors, why not have an electric one as well? So given the new format of things, we are like 34 minutes in. That pretty much wraps up the main part of this morning's show. For those of you that weren't here at the very top of the show, I am going to start a new section in a moment after we've gone through the chat. So I'm going to roll the outro. It's no longer really an outro, and not entirely sure if we'll do this every day, but I'm going to roll the outro in just a second, and we're going to go and have a bit of a crack, and then I'll come back with the news that I've been hinting at all along. So if you do have the time, please stick around. If you don't have the time, look after yourself, your family, your friends, and your colleagues. I'll be back with the crack immediately after this word from our key show sponsor. Sounds about right. Morning all. How are we doing? Yeah, a bit of a new format today. Just trying it out, just a bit of a suck it and see. So for several reasons, and I'll bore you with that some other time. We are broadcasting live on Twitch. I can see myself on the screen at the moment, and we're broadcasting live on Twitch. Twitch encourages you to stream longer, but I'm also conscious of the fact that because we've got an established format to this show, the only way I can actually add in news is at either end, because we have things like the question of the day and the mystery machine and some video to go through. I tried to front load it yesterday with bits and pieces of news and what have you, which meant that the mystery machine ran late and a few people missed out on it. And here, case in point, there you are. Dan Cullen says, guys, back to work as dealing with more water than expected, so going to see how we can get this done. See, there you are, half an hour in, and Dan Cullen, who is one of our show regulars, is leaving. So the plan basically going forward is that we will add another section to the show at the end, like this, and that section will be basically mainly talk. Not going to play any videos, so if you need to get back to work, it will be purely audio, and you can do that. But also, we can then take those bits, and I think I've got 3 bits of news to report on today. I think it's 3, maybe 4, can't remember, and I'll be doing that in a second. But we can then take that bit and put it out as a new show, but we can also take the elements of it and put those out as YouTube shorts and Instagram reels and that kind of thing. There is a method to our madness, I promise. So I'm going to quickly remind you, our question of the day today was, is there a moment that you wish you'd filmed? And I'll come to that in just a moment. I'm going to rattle through the good mornings. Gary Newhead was the first off the mark this morning. Morning, Gary. Hope you're fitting well. How long to your holiday, my friend? Can't be long now. Jim Turner, Steve Williamson, Mark Whiting, all present and correct. No sign of Peter McKenna. Yeah, see, I had the birthday confetti on standby for him. Got asked today from our supervisor, thinking of going to Balmain, what is it like? Couldn't find a word to describe it. I would honestly say the best thing you could possibly do is aim your colleague at YouTube. Go and look at some of the show footage over there, particularly the Liebherr stand. Obviously, that will tell him all he needs to know. I would say. Good morning, troops. Says Chris Ford. I'm not being taken over by Bobcat, but I've kind of got a bit of a style thing going on. I used to hate these. You know, these hats with like a high front. Used to hate them. I much prefer that kind of fits your skull. But I kind of like these now. I can change my mind, and I've proven myself wrong. So I quite like these now. And Bobcat do some really nice ones. I mean, obviously there's a whacker nice one there. There's a very similar shape. But yeah, Bobcat do them. My John Deere hat is very much like that. Got another one here. Yeah, my Brock hat is very similar as well. So yeah, had a bit of a switch. But yes, we are speaking to Bobcat about getting you a discount code. I'll tell you more about that just as soon as I know. Now, we did mention the fact that we are introducing a new, largely audio-only section. I'll be on screen, but it will be mainly audio. And Jim Turner responded, sounds perfect. I'm normally back digging by 10:30, so I'm mostly on audio after that. So, perfect. Absolutely perfect. Our question of the day was this. What is a moment you wish you'd filmed? And as I say, hand-feeding a deer in the wild, that was pretty cool. But my volley of some chewing gum into... And I kid you not, the slot in this bin was about the size of a postbox hole. Just caught it on the turn. If you know anything about Zinedine Zidane, you know exactly the motion I was doing. Caught it perfectly, flew through the air. You know, it was probably 20 feet away. When I tell the story, it's more like 40 feet away. But yes, straight through the slot. Wish somebody had caught that on camera, particularly the celebration that went after it. Steve Williamson says, I came across Patreon. C used to be on it. I think that's what he's saying. I am still on Patreon. We advised everybody that we were switching over to Substack, which is where we've got our Demolition Insider, but a few people didn't want to sign up to that, and they insisted on staying where they were at Patreon. I wish Patreon had been as easy 5 years ago as it is today. One of the things that I've always quite fancied doing, because we have a very, very big following, but we have a much smaller but very dedicated following, including some of you guys. And one of the reasons that I went down the Patreon route in the first place was basically to be able to do private content. So back when I started on Patreon, you could upload things like books and magazines and stuff like that. So you could subscribe to it and I could give it to you privately, which was fantastic. But there is now the ability on Patreon, you can actually broadcast live to it. You can put videos behind paid firewalls. So I can now do videos, and I haven't done any of that, to be honest, but it is now possible to do a video and put it behind a paid firewall. So it's a bit like going to the cinema. Rather than just turning up and watching this, you go to Patreon and you would, as a paid subscriber, you would be allowed through the door and you'd be able to see the film. So I kind of backed away from it and went down the Substack route, which has been more lucrative, I have to be honest. It's made us more money, which is a good thing. But I have to say the capability of Patreon now, one of those things, like that thing where you join a post office queue and all of a sudden the one that you were in starts to move more quickly. That's Patreon. I struggled for several years with Patreon. I largely left, and it got better. Typical. But yes, it's a very good platform now. Going back to the Black Isle show, which is, I think, this weekend, isn't it? The whole show is smaller than the Liebherr stand. Many things are smaller than the Liebherr stand. We were talking about this last night, actually. The one thing that is a drawback as far as I'm concerned, we generally get early access to the Liebherr stand because we go and do a bit with Liebherr before the show starts. And they've got all this new earth-moving equipment, remote controlled dozers and demolition excavators and stuff, but they do insist that I go round and look at the piling rigs and the cranes, and there, just to one side is the stuff that I find really sexy, but out of politeness I've got to listen to talk about piling rigs that I don't even understand. and I just want to pop over there. Just want to pop over there and play with the good stuff. So, question of the day: is there a moment that you would have liked to have filmed? Steve says, when I was an apprentice brickie, would have been good to look back. No pictures of any of it at all. Yeah, I bet. And I realise this cuts both ways. You know, that I grew up at a time when we didn't have a camera with us all the time. And when we did have a camera, it had film in it, and you got 36 shots, and then you had to go to get the thing processed. Obviously, there were certain parts of my youth I'm quite glad that nobody captured on film. Same as everyone, I would guess. But yeah, some of the things that we did and some of the places we went, would love to be able to look back at that now. Got a few scrappy old photographs from back in the day, but yeah, would be love to go back and play, video of my first overseas holiday with my mate Bruce. That would be good watching, I tell you. Steve Williamson says, I've come up with the idea of the Knox selfie, letting kids or whoever come up and get a selfie with a tilt rotator in the background, and get a photograph with you and Ed as well, I would say. Your fame is spread far and wide. I would imagine there will be a lot of people out there that would love to be able to get a photograph with you. And I do wonder, just thinking this through, being the marketing genius that I am, you and Ed both wear very similar sunglasses. You should have a couple of pairs on standby to put those on the people within the frame, so you will look part of the same team. I'm just saying, just throwing that out there. Lots and lots of people spotted the mystery machine today was a Merlot. Loads and loads of guesses, but we ultimately got to Dan Cullen getting the right answer. New comments. Let's go down to the bottom here. Okay. Thank you very much. Have you ever looked about new stickers, Mark? I haven't, to be perfectly honest. We played all around with a few designs, didn't really get too excited about any of them, and it kind of got pushed to the back. Maybe we'll revisit it. It will soon be August, and the world slows in August, so we'll have a look at that. Happy birthday, Peter. As I say, no sign of him, but happy birthday, my friend. I prefer the high front. Love the American trucker caps. Yeah, you and me both. I am planning to pick up a few of those while I'm over in the States. In actual fact, I'd quite like a couple of the American football ones. I think it may be the Miami Dolphins. They've got one in turquoise. It's an absolute belter of a hat. I'll be picking that up in some mall in the States, I would imagine. Dan Cullen says, I like that cap. Have a word with Bobcat for me. Did the Aussie American guy come back to you on the cap he was going to send you? Funnily enough, that occurred to me the other day. I saw Ricky from East Coast Demolition come up. We've never received anything. Now, that's not... It may be. He may have forgotten. I'll ask the question. But I also recently ordered a set of notepads, handmade notepads, which I quite like the look of, from a guy in America. He sent them, and he sent me proof of sending. They've never arrived. So I wonder if there is some sort of issue between American postage and UK postage. There was a message you were coming off Patreon. I used to follow Farming Simulator modders. Yeah, there was a message I was coming off Patreon. I probably need to remove that. And listen, it is one of those things that I'd love to revisit. I really do like the idea of premium content. As you probably gathered by now, this show is pulled together with some haste. I'm sat here at 7 o'clock in the morning pulling it together, and then we broadcast it at 10. But there's a lot of other stuff that I'd like to put more effort into that we can't monetize in the normal way. There's no point in anybody. For example, let's just say we do an hour-long film on Minexpo, which would be fantastic, well within our capabilities. There's a bit of me that would love to put that behind a paid firewall and do a premiere. So, if we could get some people to turn up and watch that, get to see it early, or get to see the unexpurgated version, and then everybody else on YouTube gets to see the half hour, you get to see the hour, or whatever it might be. But to be able to get some sort of monetization going with something a bit more grand and spectacular, I think that would be very, very useful. I also thought about it from the perspective of discussion as well. Obviously, we do this, and the chat's going on in the meantime. But I do wonder if we could do something a little more sexy behind a paid firewall, because what we do here obviously is broadcast to the public. Everybody knows that's the case, and I've always been conscious of the fact. I mean, not that I do particularly, but I think there is a temptation, I think, with a public broadcast to mind your P's and Q's. Whereas I think if it was done in private behind a paid firewall, maybe people would be a bit more open, and maybe we'd come up with some bigger and better ideas. I'll think about it. To clarify, the Black Isle show is next Wednesday and Thursday. Didn't realise it was midweek, but hope that all goes well. Chris Ford says, question today. In the mid-ish 70s, when self-propelled forage harvesters were a rarity, they were chopping grass when a cow kick bar entered the chopper unit on the harvester, which promptly exploded. That would have looked good on film. That really would have looked good on film. Will John Deere have a stand there at the mining show? I don't believe they will. I don't think they go quite big enough. This is really, it's Leap Air, it's Caterpillar, it's Komatsu territory. This, I mean, even to the point where Volvo don't have a stand. Obviously, Volvo have some pretty big trucks and what have you, but they are not big enough. And a lot of the stuff is dedicated to underground. We had a long discussion with a company about doing some work with them, and they did ask, and rightly asked, you've got a big audience, but most of your audience seems to be in demolition and construction. Have you any experience in underground mining? And I've been in 2 underground minings in 35 years. Didn't enjoy it on either occasion, and had to say, hats off. That's not really our game. And they said, well, come and see us anyway. Maybe we'll have a chat about doing something else. But they're not going to take part. So there you are. That gives you the scale of Minexpo. Question today. I'd love to have filmed my days learning of my dad on farming, operating old machines, working on engines. All but a memory now, sadly. Yeah. And I've mentioned this before. I wish I'd recorded some stuff with my mum and dad, earlier, memories and like family. My sister's pretty good with this, but you get the occasional message from a family member, a cousin or whatever it might be, particularly on sort of the anniversary of my parents' demise. You get a message through, and you recognise the name, but I've no idea how I'm related to them. Fourth cousin twice removed or something like that. So I wish I'd got some of that, and just some of their memories of the earlier times. The Big 4-0 next year. Tour of America on the cards. Fantastic. What a fantastic way, and what a fantastic place to spend your 40th birthday. Very, very envious. Dan Cullen says, I have a few Brock caps, love them. Yeah, I think I've got 2 here actually. The thing with premium content that you pay for, someone else has posted it somewhere else and can be seen for free. What's your thought? Well, yes, that is the case. It wouldn't be the case with what I had planned or what I might still do. So imagine. Let's just fast forward. So it's now the beginning of October. We've come back. We've gone through all the footage that we've brought back from the Minexpo show. And we have created an hour-long film, an hour-long spectacular that literally starts with touchdown in Vegas and it concludes with takeoff to come home in Vegas. And there's an hour. And there's an hour that includes all of the sights and sounds of Vegas itself, highlights of the machines going around, literally a whole hour. My idea with that is you could take that and put that behind a paid firewall where only those paying to see it could see it. But we would take all of that and possibly chop out 40 minutes of it, so you could put a condensed 20 minutes on YouTube. But if you'd like to see more, you can go over and you can pay for the privilege. I can't see any point. I think you're absolutely right. I can't see any point whatsoever in trying to sell something that you can get for free. There's no point in that whatsoever. Steve says, I'd love a Conexpo mining t-shirt, if that's what it's called. No, this one is Minexpo. It's in the same place as Conexpo, but it is Minexpo. I'll have a look. I know, I've obviously got a Conexpo t-shirt that I wear from time to time. If there is a Minexpo t-shirt, Steve, I'll see if I can pick you one up. Ed Butler is here, all the way from sunny Cyprus. Morning, Ed. Getting a tan before he heads on up to the wilds of Scotland, where everybody is blue, obviously, because that's the colour of the Scots. In the wild. Steve says late again, Ed, and Steve says the wife is in the pool. Yeah, the wife is in the pool. She's not paying attention, and therefore Ed has fired up his phone and he's come to hang out with the chaps. Morning, Ed. How's Cyprus? I bet it's fantastic. Very, very envious indeed. I think that probably covers the main part of things. So, for the first time ever, we're going to switch things up a bit. I'm going to take away that music because that's really quite annoying. If anybody needs to go, please do. But we're going to go. We're going to go into the new section in just a moment. Let me just see what this says. Get a few t-shirts and caps. Would love it from Minexpo. I'll see what I can do, Dan. As I say, I'll see what I can do. The relationship we have with exhibitions these days is somewhat different because we're being paid by certain stands to be there. If you're on the payroll, it seems a bit rude to ask for a hat as an additional. But if I can pick up any, I will certainly do that, and we'll put them up for grabs in some way or another. So yes, the new section of the show, and it's going to look a bit like when I can find the right thing. This. Right, here we go. So we have reported just this morning, this is over on Demolition News, that waste giant Veolia has been fined £3 million after a man died and another was seriously injured while decommissioning a North Sea gas rig back in 2019. Stephen Picken and Mark Kumar were working on an onshore facility in Great Yarmouth. Both men were working as demolition operatives, undertaking the decommissioning and dismantlement of offshore structures. On the 17th of October 2019, the two workers were removing an overhanging piece of metal pipework known as a skirt pile. It weighed in excess of 27 tons. On its way down, the pile struck the mobile elevating work platform, or the MUP that they were working from, threw them to the ground 12 meters below. Stephen Picken died tragically at the scene, and Mark Kumar suffered serious life-changing injuries. An investigation by the Health and Safety Executive, or the HSE, identified serious failings with the planning and the risk assessment, which did not adequately cover the planned works. Shortcomings in supervision of the incident were also identified. The company did not assess the skirt pile being removed as it was considered low risk. As a result, there was no cutting plan or safe system of work for the skirt pile. Veolia has pleaded guilty to breaching Section 2-1 of the Health and Safety at Work Act, and they've been fined £3 million in order to pay £60,000 in costs. Now, let me take that away for just a second. Need to get to the right place. Now, a couple of things out of that, which I think are worth addressing. You may have known, or you may have spotted over the weekend, I do have something to show you on this as well. Let me get rid of that. I'll show you this one instead. It's this. So that is a brand new 31,000 ton gas rig or oil rig, Shell Brent Charlie topside, that has been towed into Teesside for dismantling. So we've had an incident at Great Yarmouth, and now we've got another of these rigs coming in to be dismantled. This is a subject I've been talking about for quite some time. Obviously, we are coming to the end of certain of these oil and gas fields over in the North Sea, and rather than leaving those rigs in situ, they are being dragged back to land and dismantled and demolished. To my mind, this is a brand new form of demolition. It's something we haven't done before. And when you look at the makeup of these rigs, and I'll throw that one back up on there. I don't know. there's a better picture of it. No, that's probably the best one. As you can see, those rigs are very much unique. They're very, very top heavy. You know, the structure is virtually all above sea level, and you've got these spindly legs that go down to anchor it onto the seabed. So, for one thing, they are quite an awkward thing to demolish. They're also incredibly big. I mean, that I don't actually know the height of that. Does it mention it in the article? 31,000 metric tons. No, it doesn't appear to say the height, but you can see it for miles around. I mean, there's another photograph of it there. You can see the absolute size of that. It really is a mammoth beast. So, a couple of things. It's a new form of demolition. By and large, this is demolition work that's never been undertaken before. Is the use of things like MUPs and high reach excavators really the best way to go about this? If you've got a unique structure, a unique set of circumstances in where it's located and how you work on it, could we not have gone back to square one and said, actually, is this the best way to go about this? And even further than that, one of the things that strikes me about the dismantling of these oil rigs and gas rigs is the fact that there is a huge amount of money being set aside for it. So it did offer us an opportunity. It gave the industry an opportunity to take a big step backwards and say, okay, you know, bearing in mind, I wouldn't say money is no object, but you could take a big step backwards and say, could we do this in a different way? You know, could we, for example, put them on some sort of turntable? Bear with me. Some sort of turntable. And rather than actually having excavators having to reach up and MUPs having to reach up, do them from the top. So have suspended attachments nibbling away, gradually bring it down to the ground, keeping men and women way out of harm's way. Could we not have come up with a better way of doing this? And bearing in mind the fact that, you know, we've already seen accidents happen with these things in the past, is now not a good time? We've got a lot more of these to come. I don't know how many of the rigs in the North Sea will be coming to shore to be dismantled, but around the world, bearing in mind, you know, oil and gas deposits are depleting. We are moving more and more to sustainable fuel sources. So regardless of where you are in the world, and you know, the UK is certainly not unique in any of this. There's going to be rigs around the world. Could we not, as an industry, sit down and say, you know, given the fact that this is a new form of demolition on a new form of structure that virtually nobody has ever dealt with before, could we come up with something bigger, better, different? And following on from that, if you are going to be taking down, let's say, a high-rise office block or a high-rise apartment block, we've got experience in that. You know, the industry has got lots of experience in that. Lots of demolition companies have done lots and lots of tower blocks, and lots of bridges, and we have experience with that. We can call on past experience, and we can also call on established training regimes to make sure that we are working with the structure in front of us in the best way possible. As I say, we've got lots of experience to draw upon. With these structures, like these offshore oil and gas rigs, we don't have that. So my question, I guess, going back to the Great Yarmouth thing, was what training was given to the two guys that one was injured and one was killed? What training was given to those guys? What special preparation were they given, bearing in mind that they were now working in a very specialized application? You know, were they just given, I don't know, working at height training, which goes part of the way? But when you look at the makeup of these things, and even this, I'll go back to the article itself. The company didn't risk assess the skirt pile being removed as it was considered low risk. As a result, there was no cutting plan or safe system of work for the skirt pile. Now, you know, you might argue, and this is not for me to do, you might argue that Veolia should have seen that coming. But if they've never done it before, and I don't know if that's the case, if nobody's done that before, how would you know? Now, I'd like to think that anybody involved in any future rig demolitions will now be aware of the potential danger of removing a skirt pile. You know, all 27 tons of it. This is public domain stuff. We know exactly what it is we're dealing with now. I'd like to think that going forward, we will be aware of that, and we will take the necessary risk assessments and put in place cutting plans, safe systems of work, RAMs, and all that goes with it. But let's be absolutely clear here. We're dealing with a completely new form of demolition that virtually nobody has done before. We're dealing with structures that nobody's had to dismantle before, in an environment that nobody's had to deal with before. This is new. This is uncharted territory. Should we not, bearing in mind there's so many more of these to come, should we not be, as an industry, be taking a really, really big step backwards and going, okay, stop. Let's take a moment. Let's pause. Let's think about exactly what it is that we're doing before anybody else is injured or before anyone else is killed. I'm going to take a very quick break from that, go over to the chat. Dan Cullen says, have a wonderful day, guys. Stay safe. See you all tomorrow. Like what I see, Eddie's sitting on a sunbed reading about me in Earth Movers magazine. He probably is as well. Demolishing an oil rig. Wow, what a job to have. Yeah, absolutely. Did Fred not have a video of that demolition from top down? Not an oil rig, he didn't. No, we have featured it here. The demolition of that oil rig up here, they used 7,000 tons of material for it to fall on. Yeah. But again, one of the, I think the one that Steve is referring to there was a structure or a rig that was taken into Scotland, brought onto land, and they blew the legs out from under it. If you want to go and have a look over on YouTube, you can find a video of that. It's on our YouTube channel, actually, and you can go and see that. And basically that brought it down, sat it level, because they considered the legs were a bit spindly. They could support the weight, but once you start affecting the weight, if you chop up a piece off the side, the thing becomes unstable and unbalanced, and therefore they needed to get it down on ground level, which they did very, very successfully. But there's the thing, even that alone is a new form of demolition. When you take down a tower block, let's go back to tower blocks, an apartment block or an office block, you don't half blow it down and then manually take it down or take it down mechanically. The only time that ever happens is when the implosion goes wrong. So you either blow it down and the whole thing comes down and then you worry about clearing up the mess afterwards, or you do it as a top down with high reach excavators and you nibble it down. So the very fact that it was partially blown down before being handed over to big excavators, that is a new way of doing things. So we were talking here yesterday about, and my day's column today is about training and competence cards. What is the competence card now for dismantling an oil rig or a gas rig? Is there one? Yeah, bearing in mind we've had one person killed and another very seriously injured. Should there not be? Should we not have that sort of thing in place now? Mick Norton has joined us somewhat belatedly, but he's here nonetheless. A lot of operators were saying it's harder to tear apart with it demolished. Would have been easier doing it without blasting it, says Steve. Again, I mean, there's a bit of me that looks at it and you think, oh, well, I can fully understand the sense of bringing it down in that way. I really can. It makes it more accessible, but it also puts it on a more firm footing. I understand that. But the very fact that they, and I don't know what level these people were at, but the very fact that they're now looking at and thinking, maybe that's not the best way to do it. Is it, let's be absolutely honest, is this being made up as we go along? Is that what we're doing here? Are we taking, a multi-million pound, hundreds of thousands of tons of steel, putting it on land and just going, oh, we'll do it like we do most things and it'll be fine? Is that what we're doing? And one of the things that I find frustrating about this, there was I did try to find it this morning. I can't find it, but I do remember reading somebody has invested, I think it was $1 billion. It was either £1 billion or £1 billion euros or $1 billion. It was $1 billion of something in the creation, the building of a purpose-built tug to bring these rigs back to shore. So the oil companies and the gas companies have set aside £1 billion, euros, dollars, just to get these things back to shore. So, I'm not saying we should, the demolition industry should be rubbing its hands together and ripping anyone off. But if the gas and oil companies can afford £1 billion just to get the thing back to shore, surely they can afford £500 million to put together a program of how these things should be done. And when you think about the presence of people like Marco Larini over in Italy, or a Rush over in the Netherlands, even Kukurik here, if you said to Marco Larini or David Kukurik or Ruud Schreier over at Rush, we have an oil rig. It stands 30 stories tall. It weighs 31,000 tons, and we are going to demolish it. How would you do it? Do you really think that their answer would be, oh, well, yes, we'll use a high reach excavator? Would they? Or would they say, well, actually, given the size and the shape and the fact that there is so much overhang, when you demolish a tower block, a tower block is that shape. I can't. I've got nothing to hand to show you the shape of an oil rig, but it's a mushroom. It's got a smaller base, but it's got a big top. Is a high reach excavator really the best way to tackle that? Steve says a demolition of a fixed rig would be better than demolition of an unstable rig, would it not? Very unpredictable after it fell. I think the idea of getting it down was to put it on a more level footing. And again, I mean, listen, there are much, much smarter people than I that are doing this kind of thing. But, if that's standing on legs and you take too much weight off one side, whereas if you've got it on a flat base, it probably matters less how you change the balance. That is my guess, but I'm, as I say, not an expert. Oil companies do spend lots of money, but see, when we was drilling, if it got stuck or something broke, 50 grand downtime they pay. So probably keeping money for that. I'm sure that is the case. But here we are. So Veolia has just been fined £3 million, and one guy is dead. How many more will need to die? How many more £3 million fines will have to be levied before everybody just goes, do you know what? Let's have a think about this. Let's have a think about this. And also think about the makeup of a rig of this description. Steve, you worked on them. You know what they are. I mean, there's lots of steel, but there's almost certainly some unpleasant nasties, chemicals and asbestos and that kind of thing. I'm sure there's a fair degree of that in there. The shape of and the size of the things is unusual. All of these things, it's almost like a perfect storm demolition job. It's top heavy. It contains some unpleasantness. We've never done it before, and yet we seem to be going a bit gung-ho. Anybody think that? Mick Norton says there are breakage yards worldwide who specialise in dismantling of large rigs and vessels. There are. However, we featured this before, though. Some of the yards worldwide that are dealing with some of the larger vessels, shipbreaking and that kind of thing, they tend to be in places like India and Pakistan and what have you. And the health and safety levels are very, very poor, but they are deadly. Those facilities, those breakage yards, have deaths on a fatal accidents on a regular basis. We here in the West, in the first world, we should know better than that. We shouldn't, we can look at them and say, they have multiple deaths. We could have the same if we're not very, very careful. If we don't use this incident at Great Yarmouth back in 2019, if we don't use that as some kind of learning opportunity, well, first and foremost, Stephen Pickham will have died in vain, but also we could have more Stephen Pickens in the future. That is my concern. If anybody's got any more takes on that, and on the subject, and I'm glad Mick Norton's joined us, because Mick sent me over a thing yesterday, and I was going to do this as a standalone. In fact, I may still do. So I'm going to read to you what I've written here, and then we can have a chat about that afterwards. I'm coming at this from a demolition point of view, although, as you will see, this is from a quarry point of view, but you'll get the idea. We're constantly told that justice is a wheel that turns slowly. We're constantly told that authorities need time in which to carry out accident investigations. And we are constantly told that we can't speak about fatal accidents for fear of prejudicing future possible. Let me try that again. We're constantly told we can't speak about fatal accidents for fear of prejudicing a possible future prosecution. That's why we're still waiting for the Didcot inquiry to deliver its findings more than 8 years after 4 men were killed. It's also why we're still waiting almost 5 years after a tragic accident claimed the lives of 2 more workers at a demolition site in Redcar. And that's why it's taken almost 5 years to investigate and prosecute Veolia over the death of Stephen Picken at Great Yarmouth. It doesn't need to be this way. Earlier this month, a man was killed in an incident at an overseas quarry. His leg was crushed by a wheel-loaded tyre while he was fixing a puncture. He died from his injuries a few days later in hospital. The Safe Quarry organisation reported that incident to its members across the mineral products industry. It recounted a similar incident that occurred on a site here in the UK back in 2019, in which another man was killed in a very similar incident. Safe Quarry has already provided its members with a set of learning and action points, together with links to further information and resources. They've responded quickly and efficiently. They've embraced a tragic accident as a learning opportunity. And at no point have they prejudiced any forthcoming prosecution. So the quarry sector can take details of a fatal accident and use them to make their industry better. The powered access industry can log each new incident and accident and fatality and use that to inform training in their sector. And yet in demolition and construction, we just continue to wait for those wheels of justice to turn. How does that make any sense? How does that make any sense? I can't imagine for a millisecond the prospect of the NFTC getting anywhere near an oil rig demolition dismantling. Okay, so here's the thing. And listen, I am critical of the NFTC on a regular basis, which is why they don't speak to me at all anymore. But that's a whole other story. But Veolia, who did the Great Yarmouth job, actually bought KDC Contractors, which is an NFTC member to this day, as far as I know, and they bought it for their ability, their capabilities in this kind of environment. And they're not alone. You know, there are NFTC members that are active in this kind of industry. They're also over in petrochemical. They're also in the nuclear industry, and so on down the line. Even the NFTC, I think, would admit that this is demolition, but it's not. It's such a new challenge that it almost lives on the periphery of the NFTC. You know, the NFTC membership most of them are very good at taking down structures, bridges, tower blocks, houses. They've spent decades doing precisely that. But even, you know, when I think about the companies that I believe to be the creme de la creme in terms of professionalism within the demolition industry, companies like Armac and AR Demolition and Erith and people like that, would they take on an oil rig? I mean, probably the chances are AR and Armac are probably would be considered too small a company to be handed the contract to do it. But even with all of their expertise, I think even they would. I think they'd say, "Well, that sounds like a challenge." But I think even they would go, "Christ, that's a problem to be solved right there. We've not done anything like this." And bearing in mind that the way that duty of care works and the way in which contracts are let, there is often in the letting of demolition contracts, there is this weighting system, WEIGHTING, weighting. So, you know, are you going to employ local people? That will, you know, if you are, that sort of swings things in your favor. Obviously, the cost of the demolition will swing things either way and whatever. I can understand that, but one of the things that often comes up is, have you done this before? Now, in the immediate aftermath of the Didcot disaster, the questions were raised about the fact that Coleman and Company had never taken down a power station before. Now, whether that had any impact on the actual demolition of the boiler house that subsequently killed 4 people, we still don't know. 8.5 years later, we don't know. But the very fact that they were given that job based on no previous experience. How many companies have previous experience on oil rigs? There's probably 2 or 3 I can think of here in the UK. Not much more. Is that good? Is that good? And if for example, if an Erith, who are brilliant, Keltbray, who are brilliant, McGee's, who are brilliant, if they were given one of these jobs, there's probably 80% of me says they do a cracking job, but there's another 20% where you're thinking, you've never done that before. How, what are you basing everything on? What are you basing your RAMs upon? What are you basing your training upon? What are you basing your equipment portfolio upon? Or are you relying on all stuff you've done before? I've done a tower block, I can do an oil rig. Really? Our guys are trained to work at height on a building. They'll be okay on a rig. Really? Our equipment can take down a 22-story straight up and down building. It will take down an oil rig. Really? Can you imagine Americans looking at taking down rigs? Wouldn't even be an Eastern. Can you do it? Hesitation, possibly? Not sure. The fact that they say, have you done this before? Every structure or rig would be different. No job the same. I mean, in absolute truth, that's not dissimilar to tower blocks. Even tower blocks that are built side by side, there is often differences in the makeup and, where the heaviest steel is and things like that. So that is not entirely new. But having never done anything like this before, Mick Norton says, I bet it's cheaper to tow the rig. I would bet it's cheaper to tow the rig due for dismantling to a breaker's yard in the subcontinent of India. It probably is cheaper, but I mean, there are, I think we've got 2 or 3 facilities now. Obviously, the one that's just come into Pool up it's Hartlepool, isn't it? That one. Yeah, the Brent Charlie topside is arrived in Hartlepool for decommissioning. It's at the Able Seaton Port. Now, Able have done these before. They are one of the companies that I would say has certainly got lots of experience in this kind of thing. No, nothing more there. There are, I think there's 1 or 2 facilities up in Scotland as well. Sorry, my screen just went weird. If you are, I don't know, Bell, Shell or BP or whoever it is that owns these rigs, for a start, do you really want to send it to India? Because, as I said, those breaking yards in the subcontinent are not great for health and safety. If you're looking at the purely from a PR perspective, if you are Shell or BP, do you really want the potential death of 1 or more local workers in India, Bangladesh, Pakistan on your hands? You probably don't. Obviously, shipping it all the way to India wouldn't be particularly cheap. But then by the same token, would you not, if you were Shell or BP or whoever else manages these things, would you not be looking for some reassurance that whoever is taking down these things has actually done it before, has got some experience, and has got, when you think about, Steve will back me up on this because he's been there, he's done this. When you think about the way in which the health and safety is managed on these offshore rigs, we are talking about multi-billion-pound companies here working in multi-trillion-pound industries, and their health and safety is to one of the highest standards. It's probably not quite on the par with the nuclear industry, but it will be pretty damn close. And yet, despite all of that, They are handing the dismantling of one of their former rigs to a company that potentially has never done it before or has never done that type before. Is that right? And it's the same argument. We keep coming back to the same argument that we had with the Didcot power station as well. I can't remember the name of the company that owned the Didcot power station or that operated the Didcot A power station. Neither here nor there, but they too will have had very, very exacting levels of health and safety within the facility itself, to make sure that men and women were kept safe, and it operated for decades, and yet they handed the keys to a company that openly admitted, we have not taken down a power station before with a suspended boiler in a boiler house. Is that really a good idea? Regardless of how the Didcot investigation pans out, surely somebody somewhere along the line is going to ask the question of the owners of the Didcot power station, why did you believe it to be a good idea to allow a company that has never done this before to do it here? Was it a cost thing? Did Coleman and Company offer them some exceptional reassurance? Don't get me wrong, Coleman and Company, when you think about some of the work they did at Birmingham New Street, fantastic. I mean, an absolute top-notch demolition company, but never done a power station before? That potentially could come back and bite the owner of the Didcot power station on the arse, because questions should be asked. 1 second. Gary Muirhead says, sorry, Mark, been pouring concrete this morning. Yes, Tenerife on the 25th of August, 4 weeks on Sunday. I think you get back just as I go off to the States, actually. Steve Williamson says, Nig in Invergordon. 20 minutes from my house. And Kishorn in the West Highlands, about an hour away. Yeah, you are up in rig dismantling land, aren't you? No question about it. Mick Norton says, I worked briefly at the Able Yard you referred to years ago. One hell of a setup. Yeah, I've not been to it, but I know a couple of the guys at Able, and I've also sat through presentations that these guys have given. And Able, but they've done it before. This Brent Charlie topside platform that we're talking about, it's going to the Able Seaton Park, and Able have done it before. Had Veolia? I don't actually know the answer to that question. I'm asking the question. I heard the oil companies sell the rigs on, have nothing to do with the scrap. Well, I think that was certainly the word in the industry when Veolia bought KDC. They basically wanted access to the scrap. I think that was pretty much the idea. The company that's never done that type of demolition work will sub out the specialist work. Will they? And I'm going to use, purely because I know this one better, that's not what happened at Didcot. The Didcot power station project demolition was won as a joint venture between Coleman and Company and J. Bryan Victoria, or now JBV Demolition. And at the 11th hour, that joint venture was dissolved, and JBV, or J. Bryan Victoria, who had worked in the energy industry before, they were basically kicked to the curb for one reason or another. I don't know the details. They were kicked to the curb, and Coleman and Company progressed on their own. And they did not farm it out. They did it themselves. Steve says, Kishorn Port and Dry Dock is the former construction site of the Ninian Central Platform, which had over 60,000 tons, is still one of the world's largest man-made movable objects ever moved across the face of the earth. Seems appropriate that these rigs should go full circle. They were built here, they go out, do their job, and then they come back to be dismantled. That certainly makes perfect sense. We can talk more about that, but I did have one other thing that I wanted to share with you, which is I need to stop that, and I need to show you something else. Bear with me for 1 second while I find the bit what I'm looking for. There we are. This is from Construction Index just this morning. Britain's pothole crisis is on a downward spiral, according to a National Audit Office report. According to the public spending watchdog, the increasing backlog in road maintenance work hinders local authorities in undertaking preventative maintenance work that could deliver better value for money. The Department for Transport, or the DFT, it appears does not even know how bad things have got because it doesn't want to overburden local councils by demanding complete data from them. The National Audit Office, or the NAO, says the condition. This is a report called "The Condition and Maintenance of Local Roads in England." Despite their importance, the condition of local roads is declining and the backlog to return them to a good state of repair is increasing. DFT has provided between 1.1 and 1.6 billion pounds of capital funding each year to local authorities and has set out plans for additional funding through 2034. Given the fiscal constraints, it is essential that DFT secures maximum value from the funding it has available. However, at present, DFT does not have a good enough understanding of the local condition of roads and does not use the limited data it does have to allocate its funding as effectively as possible. Managing the local road network is becoming increasingly complex. For example, as climate change and autonomous vehicles demand more from it, and the additional funding that DFT has secured provides an opportunity to equip local authorities to better meet these challenges. So, there's a bit of me that thinks the fine folks up at JCB with their Pothole Pro are probably rubbing their hands together now, thinking, "Oh, look at all these potholes that we're going to get to repair." And yet, there does appear to be a large gap in the process. We don't. I think as private individuals, funnily enough, the road outside my house has just been resurfaced, so I don't have it anymore. But there's bits of my surrounding area here where I almost instinctively know where the potholes are, and I drive accordingly, to skirt around them and that kind of thing. But it appears that the local authorities do not have that at their disposal. One of the things that I find remarkable about this is the fact that there are, I wish I could remember the name of, there's one specific app where you as a private individual can download an app to your iPhone or your Samsung equivalent, and you can go out to your local road or on road nearby and you can take a photograph of a pothole. That app will then put a geotag on it, and it will send it to the relevant local authority to report it so that it can be put into their queue for reporting. Bearing in mind we have that data, that app exists. It's not something that's coming in the dim and distant future. We have that app, we have that opportunity, and yet we don't know. The local authorities don't know where the potholes are, and we don't know apparently how to fix them. Made me think of a thing. It was odd that we were speaking to Neil Edwards via Instagram earlier on. I had worked with Neil for about 15, 16 years. So over the course of that period, we probably worked together in the run-up and the aftermath of probably 3 or 4, possibly 5 different general elections or minor elections. And one of the things that was very, very predictable with those elections was the freeing up of funds. Governments towards the end of their tenure at number 10 declare, we've got no more money. We can't afford this and we can't afford that. And then somebody announces a general election, and somebody reaches down the back of the sofa at number 10 and says, we've just found an additional £1 billion to invest in the repair of roads. And we found another £1 billion to spend on schools or hospitals or whatever it might be. In the run up to an election, governments always find some new way to bring the general public back on side. Yes, we've been a bit crap for 3 years, but if you vote us back in again, we'll fix your local roads, your schools will be better, and so on down the line. That didn't happen this time. Now, there's a bit of me, the cynic in me, which is the biggest part, there's a bit of me that believes that is one of the reasons that Rishi Sunak actually called a snap election, because he had nothing more to give away. I think the cupboard basically is bare. There was no way of saying, yes, we have been a bit rubbish. We did make an absolute balls of the COVID crisis, and we did line the pockets of our cronies and stuff throughout the PPE crisis and everything else. However, if you vote for us again, we'll fix the hospitals, we'll give you more schools, and your roads will be like driving over the bottom of a baby. They didn't do that. And I seriously wonder now. I wonder. We've got new construction ministers. I'm sure we'll have new transport ministers and so on down the line. I wonder what they will have to work with, because my gut feeling tells me that the cupboard is bare. There is no more money to be had. Now, bearing in mind we are apparently pissing 1.1 to 1.6 billion pounds of capital funding up the wall on road repairs and not knowing actually where that's going. Is that really a good way forward? Is that a good way forward? Is there any truth, says Gary Muirhead, is there any truth that electric cars in London will be charged £15 a day to enter the city? I hadn't heard that. Let me have a look. This is the nature of this part of the show. I'm not seeing any mention of that whatsoever. Yes, I am. Transport for London has announced plans. I'll show you what I'm looking at. Actually, that would be a lot easier, wouldn't it? If I do away with that. Let me have a look. There we are. This comes from Cities Today, which I don't know. So I'm not stating categorically that this is news. This could be fake news, but I'll tell you what it says. Transport for London, TfL, has announced plans to charge electric vehicle owners the full daily congestion charge from December 2025. Currently, drivers of zero-emission vehicles pay £10 or $12.76 for a yearly exemption from the £15 daily charge, but from late next year will be liable for the full amount. The congestion charge's cleaner vehicle discount was part of our phased scheme to tackle London's toxic air, a TfL spokesman said. Ending the cleaner vehicle discount from 25th of December 2025 will maintain the effectiveness of the charge, which is in place to manage traffic and congestion in the heart of London. The move has been criticised by some environmental groups and the Federation of Small Businesses. Campaign group Clean Cities called the change puzzling, saying it could affect businesses. Our latest polling shows Londoners believe small businesses should have more support to help them switch to cleaner electric vehicles, says Oliver Lord of Clean Cities. Let's be absolutely clear here. I mean, if they do this, I mean, it's a travesty. But would anyone be surprised? The congestion charge and the ultra low emission zones are largely meaningless. Now, I do consider myself to be environmentally friendly. I would like my children and grandchildren to be able to breathe fresh air. That would be nice. But we have this conversation whenever we talk about zero emissions. What is the point of trying to fix emissions in the UK when China and India and America continue to belch toxic smoke into the atmosphere? Our tiny contribution will not make a big difference worldwide. Now, my take on that is every little helps and so on down the line. But when you're looking at something like the ultra low emission zones and you're looking at the congestion charge, obviously the original idea was partly the congestion charge was to make people think twice about taking their car into London. But at least equal and possibly more than that, it was a money-making exercise. It helps fund Transport for London. Even if everybody that travels into London used an electric vehicle, how much difference do you think that is going to make to the world's carbon emissions? Yes, there will be a tiny, tiny, tiny fraction of improvement. This is a money-making exercise. So my personal belief is This has got nothing to do with the environment. It's got nothing whatsoever to do with congestion, and I'll come back to that in just a moment. This is purely a money-making exercise. Now, just going back to the business of congestion, if anybody's ever been to London anytime recently, you'll know that we have several cycle superhighways. So we've given over a part of an existing road. Now, bearing in mind that a lot of the roads in and out of London and serving within London were built way, way, way before we had cars and buses and trucks and stuff. But so we've got a finite amount of space and we've got these finite roads. But in their infinite wisdom, the Transport for London have decided we've got a 2-lane highway, but we're going to give over part of that to bicycles. And often, when you're walking around London, you come to one of these cycle superhighways, and there's not a bike to be seen. What there is, however, is just beyond that. There's a huge queue of cars because we already had congestion, which is one of the reasons why we had the congestion charge. So rather than freeing up more space to ease congestion, in their infinite wisdom, they have reduced the size of the road to make way for bicycles. I like a bicycle ride. I like a bicycle ride around London. But is that really the most efficient way to serve a modern city? And if you have got a log jam of traffic, is reducing the width of the road actually helpful? Or are you just not making the bottleneck a whole lot worse? Steve Williamson says electric vehicles as well as hydrogen fuel cell vehicles are exempt from the London congestion charge. However, vehicle owners must register for the cleaner vehicle CVD discount to benefit from this exemption. As I say, one of my concerns with this news piece that I've got here is I've never ever heard, I'll throw it back up on the screen, I have never ever heard of Cities Today as a publication. So this might be one of these scaremongering, Facebook pages that tells you things that turn out not to be true at all. That's a month we've had the electric car. Love it. Don't think I'd go back to petrol or diesel car. So much nicer to drive, plenty of power, and charging in the Highlands is no problem. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Listen, if somebody could wave a magic wand, I mean, there are a few supercars that I'd quite like to have, but yeah, I'd quite happily welcome a Tesla into this household. But it wouldn't change one important point. I wouldn't be driving in London anyway. I mean, I've got a train station that takes me into London in about 20 minutes, right at the end of my road. There's no way I'm driving in London at all. It's madness. It's chaos. Chris Ford says, I think you're saying what most people have known for a long time, that basically we're being scammed. Mostly people who live in London, but it's spreading. Yeah. And I've said this before. One of the issues with this is that London is often used as the test bed. And I almost like, if we can get away with it in London, we'll do it elsewhere. So things like the cycle superhighway, we did one here. So sooner or later, if they haven't got one already, Birmingham will get one, Manchester will get one, Newcastle, Leeds, Glasgow, and so on down the line. Ultra low emission zones, we pioneered them in London. Here in the UK, I mean, not other places in the world have got them, but we pioneered them in London. And once we realised that people weren't going to take to the streets and hang Sadiq Khan from the highest lamppost, we rolled it out. Birmingham, Manchester, Leeds, Newcastle, and so on down the line. And this could be exactly the same. And if you're one of those people living in London and you've been out and spent 20, 30, 40 grand on an electric car to make sure you're exempt from the congestion charge and the ultra low emission zone charge as well, where do you stand? Where do you stand legally? Just because somebody, assuming that the Cities Today article is absolutely right, they've decided to move the goalposts. It's not your fault, is it? You bought your car in good faith to abide by the rules of the day, and now they're moving the goalpost. Should you not be entitled to some sort of compensation against that? That'd make them think twice. There we are. Anyway, that's the first time we've done this. I don't know what you made of it. I hope you enjoyed it. I don't know whether we'll be doing it daily, but maybe if we've got enough news to talk about. We had a couple of good ones to talk about today: potholes and oil rigs and electric cars and stuff. Let me know in the chat if you like this kind of thing. We'll do it again. If you hated it and thought it was an absolute bore, we'll probably still do it and just to accept the fact that you're bored. I don't know. We'll see how we go. Steve says, I prefer it this way. Thanks, Steve. Appreciate that. Yeah, as I say, I don't want to lose the ability to chat. That's why we keep the crack. But I do want to get to the show itself, the videos and everything else. I want to get to that quickly. But there's an awful lot going on in and around the industry that I do think it is worth sharing and discussing as well. So, yeah, maybe we'll revisit this. If anything, it just gave me an opportunity to come up with a new jingle, which I quite liked. Let's have a look. Let's all go to America and drive big, fat V8s. Not a bad idea. And it's better than talking absolute crap and non-relevant. Wow, some of it was relevant. I'm not entirely sure all of it was, but the WhatsApp group can sometimes be WTF. Yeah, I listen. I've actually removed a few bits and pieces from the WhatsApp group in the past couple of weeks. Partly because it had nothing to do whatsoever with anything that we do within the WhatsApp group, but also because, frankly, some of it was vaguely racist. Not on my watch. If you want to go and share that kind of stuff on, and I'm not talking to you, Steve, I'm talking to others. If you want to go and share that kind of stuff, do it on your own time. You're not doing it in my WhatsApp group because that's not my thing at all. Everybody, go and have a day. I'm going to go and take my wife for a cup of coffee because I think she deserved it. Everybody, have a good day. I'll be back tomorrow, 10 a.m. with the usual thing. And maybe some of this. We'll see. See how it goes. Till then, everybody, have a good day. See you soon. All the best.